So I wanted to make this video to share my thoughts on something that I believe to be a huge problem in our American society. Basically, the government has allowed for private business entities to come in and construct prisons and also provide those same business investors with contracts that guarantee to maintain a certain level of occupancy for those prisons. And the issue now becomes that in allowing profit to be the driving and motivating factor in incarcerating people, you basically remove the whole rehabilitative aspect of it. Basically, when business comes into play, nobody cares whether or not people improve themselves or rehabilitate in any way or better themselves. They don't care. They don't care, and the higher the rate of recidivism for them, the better, because obviously it means more money. So that's one aspect of this conversation. The other aspect of it is that in addition to that, as it currently stands, those that are convicted of felonies and certain crimes in the United States are criminally disqualified from having certain jobs for the rest of their lives. So in addition to that criminal disqualification, there is what I believe to be the last remaining form of legal discrimination in the United States, and that is to ex-convicts, to people who have gone through the prison system, who have paid their debt as according to what society told them it was, and they come out, myself included. I do fall into this category as well. And we're told that for the rest of our lives, employers are going to be able to utilize our past and our mistakes against us. And to sum it up, basically, I can't get a job anywhere. The worst entry-level jobs, the minimum wage jobs that nobody wants, I can't even get those. I'm automatically turned away just because, with technology as it is, everybody does a criminal history search and boom, right away. And I feel that shouldn't be. I don't feel that that's fair. And so when you start to look at the picture from that sense, you see how it can become very problematic. So to give you another example and another perspective, I do volunteer work at a jail, juvenile jail in Newark, New Jersey. So that's also something I'm very passionate about. I benefit greatly from doing it, and I formed some great relationships with some of the kids. I'm a mentor to them, and I like the work. I feel like a lot of these kids are just lost, and similar to me when I was their age, they're not necessarily bad. They've just made terrible decisions and bad choices and ended up a lot of times due to circumstance in these places, and it's a tough place to be. So I'm glad to be able to go back there and do work there with them. But as I'm there, I observe and I ask myself, what is the bottom line as to the problem? What's going on? Why are so many, and why is it getting worse? Why are so many kids so lost? And so I try to step back and look at the picture from a larger scale, and what I attribute it to is basically poverty, of course. Poverty is the main thing. When people are poor, they grow up without, and they grow up, for the most part, much more difficult circumstances than others. But what is the biggest contributing factor to that poverty? That was the question I asked myself, and the answer I came to was the following: that if you go back 30, 40, 50 years, there are people that were imprisoned during those times, decades ago, that are still, to this day, criminally disqualified, like I am. Think about that. People who are senior citizens now, who made mistakes 40, 50 years ago when they were young kids and didn't know anything, are still paying that price. So when you add up all those years that passed and all those people that went through the system, think about it. We're talking about tens of millions of people who are directly affected by this allowance of discrimination from the workplace. Tens of millions. And think about how many are indirectly. Their families, their children, their friends, everyone. Everyone. So the bottom line is, what do you do when you're told you can't legally provide for yourself and for your family? What do you do? And to top it all off, in addition to these disqualifications, you are also prevented and disqualified, not eligible from receiving most forms of government aid and welfare. Think about that. People who really need it the most, who need a little help to get back on their feet after going through the prison system, are the ones that are told you're not eligible. So when you factor all this in, you realize that it is a system that is structured to do exactly what it's doing, to continue the revolving door of prisoners. So going back to what I was saying before about the juveniles there and my observations, I look at these kids, I know them, I interact with them, we have a good rapport with each other, we establish friendships, they trust me. And I look at them and I wonder, what can we do to help? Why is it that these kids receive no help? And I realized, it dawned on me. These kids from Newark, from the ghetto, the average kid in the street is worth zero as far as the value, the dollar value that society places on them. And business and corporate entities value them at nothing. They don't care about them. They disregard them. But in taking that same kid and putting him into the prison system, he now has a huge value. Huge. In New Jersey, off the top of my head, it's something like almost $50,000 per year, per inmate in prison, that the state is paying. A lot of times, these private entities. Think about that. So the kid is worthless here. And the next day, he's in the system. You put him in a cage, and now he's worth 50 grand a year. 50,000 a year. Think about that. So when you look at it from that perspective and the grander picture of it all, I believe it's reasonable to come to the same conclusion that I have. That it's a setup and it's not right. It actually equates into modern day slavery. We are slaves. People like myself who are told that you cannot work and you have to suffer the consequences of this mistake you made for the rest of your life. Think about it. We've all made mistakes. Some of us made criminal mistakes where we broke laws and we had to deal with that. Others made other mistakes, sometimes much worse, where there were no consequences in that regard. But either way, people grow, people develop, people change. How is it that one act can be held against us for the rest of our lives? Forever. So again, I'm going to conclude this video with the following question. And I've been in correspondence with a lot of people about this, with the president, with the White House, and he's written me back, with multiple senators. I'm trying to get this message out. And the question I ask all these people is, what do you expect people to do? What do you do? Forget about why they ended up in prison or what they did or how you feel about it, whether they deserve another chance or not. Forget about all that. Just put yourself in that position hypothetically. Or a loved one of yours, one of your children, your relatives, your brother, your father, whoever. They got there, they made a mistake, they went to prison, and they come out and they can't do anything. They cannot get a job anywhere because before they're even allowed to demonstrate who they are, they're shown the door. And that's it. Please ask yourself that question and see if you feel like I do that this is a big enough problem that we need to address it. It's just not fair. It is not fair, and allowing these businesses to come in and make money from the prison system with guarantees from the states turns us into slaves. Don't let us be slaves. It may not affect you today, but one day it will. Please, give it some thought. Thank you.